I remember the road like it was a memory stitched into my mind. A ribbon of cracked asphalt curling through endless forest. The fog pressed close, soft and damp, muffling even my own footsteps. Every tree seemed to lean in, their twisted branches like crooked fingers pointing at me. A faint light flickered somewhere ahead, maybe a lantern, maybe a reflection, but I could never be sure. My breath puffed pale in the cold air, and the silence hummed with something just out of reach. Something watching. I thought I was alone, but the rustling beneath the fallen leaves said otherwise. My heart slowed and quickened at the same time, the quiet settling over me like a weight I couldn't shake. That's when I saw it. The trail narrowed. The forest had gone quiet, but not in the way I expected. No birds, no breeze. It was late afternoon. The sun leaned low, scattering gold through the high pines. Their needles shivered, though the air was still. I stepped into a clearing. The trees seemed aware. Their trunks stretched taller than memory, and the shadows between them twisted, like they were breathing. A fog had begun to curl at my ankles. Pale, thin, moving with a life of its own. It smelled faintly of damp earth and cold smoke. Then the whispering began, not from the wind, not the rustling of leaves. Voices, names I didn't know, slipping through the needles. I froze, my boots pressed into the wet moss. The whispers, soft and insistent, reached my ears and sank into my chest. A shadow shifted at the edge of the fog. I caught it for a heartbeat, crouched low, watching, its shape wrong. Too long, too still, like it didn't belong to this world. The mist curled higher, around my legs, around my sleeves, around my thoughts. Every step I want to take felt muffled, distant, like moving underwater. I tilted my head. The pines seemed to lean closer, each needle vibrating with the same quiet hum, a rhythm I could feel more than hear. I wanted to step back, but curiosity anchored me. Somewhere, deep, I felt the need to know the names the forest whispered. The shadows stretched further. They reached across the clearing, darkening the light. I thought I saw eyes, tiny, reflective, darting between the trunks. Then gone. The fog thickened. I could feel it brushing my calves, climbing over my boots. The whispering rose and fell, like breathing, slow and careful. I tried to move my hands. They were cold, tingling. The mist smelled sharper now, faintly metallic, like rain on iron. A step, soft, closer, behind me. I couldn't turn. I couldn't breathe. And yet, I could sense it, crouched just beyond a veil of white. Time became sticky. The forest seemed paused, listening with me. Even the air felt uncertain. Then the voices changed. No longer names. A sighing, long and low, curling through the pines. It pressed against my chest, heavy, quiet, patient. I want to call out, but my voice had drowned in the fog. Only the rustling answered, a rhythm, too subtle to understand, but impossible to ignore. The shadow moved again, not toward me, not away, just there, watching, waiting. I stepped back, the mist wrapped around my ankle, holding, soft but unyielding. The names whispered once more, different now, familiar, though I didn't know why. The clearing seemed to stretch endlessly. Light fractured through the fog, pale and trembling. I felt the forest breath on my neck, a pulse beneath the soil, a heartbeat too slow, too steady. I realized I wasn't alone, not in the way I had been expecting, not with someone beside me, alone with something older, quieter, patient. The whispering faded, or maybe I stopped hearing it. The shadow did not leave. It crouched, still at the edge of sight, just beyond the fog. I wanted to move, but I couldn't. I just watched and waited. The sun dipped lower. The clearing swallowed itself in mist. Saw footsteps, or maybe none, echo beneath the pines. And I remained in that quiet, listening, frozen between fear and curiosity, knowing I could not leave, and not sure I wanted to. The trees thinned. The ground softened with fallen needles. Even the air felt heavier here. A pale light flickered between the trunks, not steady but quivering like it breathed. I couldn't tell if it was candle or something else. I moved closer. Each step sank into damp earth. A hum hovered in the air, static, low, insistent, vibrating through my chest. The cabin sat crooked among the pines. It was gray and rotting. Windows shivered, fragile and trembling, as if the walls themselves were alive. I touched the doorframe. Cold, splintered. It smelled of old smoke and damp leaves. Something forgotten. The hum drew me, soft, persistent, pulling me toward the center of the cabin, toward shadows that shouldn't move. Inside, everything blurred. Edges melted into gray. Objects were almost recognizable, but not quite. An old chair, maybe a table, shapes bending at the corners. The air smelled dry, faintly metallic, like old wires left for rust. A door creaked open, alone, without wind, without reason, and behind it, a shadow moved, not toward the light, not away, opposite, sliding across the floor in slow, deliberate arcs, leaving the room colder than before. The light flickered again. Shadows leapt and twisted. The hum rose and fell, like a pulse I could feel beneath my ribs. I wanted to step back. I wanted to stop breathing. I reached for the nearest wall. Rough, grainy, splintering beneath my fingers. The shadow lingered, patient, just beyond clarity. Its edges blurred into the dim glow. The room held its own rhythm. I felt it in my feet, in the hairs on my neck, in the space between my heartbeats. Soft, relentless, waiting. A gust of air, or maybe the cabin itself, shifted the door again. The shadows stretched, bending into corners the light could not touch. I sensed it watching me, not with eyes, but with absence. The hum softened, then whispered, closer to silence than sound. And in that quiet, I could smell old paper, smoke, something faintly sweet that made my stomach tighten. I wanted to turn. I wanted the forest, the wind, the ordinary, but the hum anchored me. The shadow tugged gently, insistently, like it was part of the cabin, part of the air, part of me. My fingers brushed the table. Objects shifted beneath my touch. Blurred shapes recoiled, then returned to vagueness, like memories I almost had. The door remained open. The shadow did not move closer. It lingered in reverse of the light, a dark twin of something I could not name. I inhaled slowly. The stale air wrapped around my lungs, heavy, almost wet. My pulse echoed in the silence, loud, brittle, fragile. I took a step back. The floorboards groaned softly, careful, unhurried. The hum settled into a low vibration beneath my feet. The cabin exhaled with me, or maybe I exhaled with it. The light flickered once more. Windows breathed. Shadows stretched long and thin. And then, almost imperceptibly, everything stilled. I remained there, alone, yet not alone. The hum fading. The shadow watching. The cabin breathing around me. A quiet dread that did not rush, did not leave, just waited. The road was empty. Night pressed in from both sides, thick and still. My headlights carved pale rectangles into the fog. The tires hissed on wet asphalt. Fog curled around them, rising, leaning inward, as if the forest itself was reaching. I could feel it pressing against the car, slow, patient, quiet. Then I saw them. Eyes, reflective, distant, a line along the roadside. Red, gold, pale white. They glimmered in the dark. Blinking made them shift. Closer each time, though I swore I hadn't moved. I tried to focus, but the edges of the forest blurred. The fog tangled in my breath, cold and damp. A soft hum lingered in the air. Or maybe it was my own heartbeat echoing. The eyes didn't blink, didn't move, just waited. I slowed the car. The fog wrapped around the tires, curling, lifting, closing in. I could smell wet pine and earth. Something faintly metallic, like distant rain on iron. A shape stepped onto the asphalt, tall, unmoving. Its form was unclear, stretched in the fog, a shadow that refused definition. I blinked. Gone. Only the eyes remained, glimmering along the roadside, patient. I drove on. The isolation thickened with every mile. The headlights caught glimpses of shapes between the trees, shadows too still, too deliberate. I blinked again. Closer. The eyes edged toward the car. I could feel their attention pressing against the glass, soft but undeniable. The fog seemed to follow, not in front, not behind, but curling around the tires, brushing my ankles inside the car, cold and damp. I could taste it, faintly metallic, almost sweet. The shadow stepped forward once more. This time, nearer, filling the road with something vast and still. It did not move like a person. It moved like absence, like darkness waiting to settle. I tried to breathe quietly, every exhale thick, tasting of fog and pine. My pulse drummed in the silence, sharp, brittle, hollow. Blinking again, the shadow vanished. The eyes lingered, rows of them, following patient just at the edge of sight. The road stretched endlessly. Every tree leaned closer, twisting, bending. Even the fog seemed alive, curling, climbing, pressing. I slowed further. The hum of my engine felt distant, static, or maybe the forest itself, vibrating beneath the tires. I wanted to stop. I wanted the ordinary, the mundane, the safe, but the eyes held me, not with threat, not with motion, but with presence. Another blink. The shape had returned, tall, still, and impossible to measure. It stepped lightly, or perhaps the road itself lifted it. The car's interior smelled damp. The seats clung to me, cold against my skin. The fog pressed in with every inch, every heartbeat, every soft turn of the wheel. I blinked again. Only eyes, still patient, waiting. The night did not change. The road did not end. The fog did not lift. I drove on, alone, and the eyes followed, quiet, relentless, like a secret the forest had whispered to itself, and now shared only with me. The forest floor was dry. Leaves crunched beneath my boots, sharp and brittle. No wind stirred. And yet, behind me, leaves rustled again. Each step echoed, unnaturally loud. I stopped. The sound lingered, stretching, as if the path itself remembered my passage. A flash of white darted between the trees. Gone before I could focus. A shadow crossed the path ahead. Slow, deliberate. I held my breath. The air smelled faintly of earth, decaying leaves, and something cold I couldn't name. A soft hum began, low, vibrating just beyond comprehension. Not music, not wind, something else. I knelt. The ground was soft, damp under fallen leaves. Footprints pressed into the soil. They weren't human, long, narrow, clawed, or maybe twisted in ways I could not measure. They trailed back the way I had come. And yet, no one was there. I rose slowly. The hum persisted, now brushing against my ears, my chest, my spine. The forest felt alive. Every tree, every shadow, every crackling leaf seemed to watch, to wait. A leaf shifted beside me. No wind moved it. I turned, nothing. Still, the rustling continued. Soft, patient, circling, always just beyond sight. My fingers brushed a fallen branch. It shivered under my touch, like a pulse, alive. The hum throbbed with it, a rhythm I could feel more than hear. I moved forward cautiously. Each step echoed, a soft drum in the quiet. White flashes, shadows stretching, always at the edge of vision. The path narrowed. The trees leaned closer, roots twisted like veins, crawling across the ground. I could smell damp moss, wet bark, and something sharper, something metallic hidden beneath decay. I stopped again. The hum shifted, almost a sigh. It surrounded me now, pressing close, a soft weight on my shoulders. A dry leaf skittered across the path. I glanced behind. The rustling followed, moving with me, though I saw nothing. I knelt once more. Other prints, closer, intersecting mine. Evidence of a presence, silent, unseen, deliberate. The forest held its breath. I held mine. The hum lingered, a constant, vibrating companion. I wanted to turn, to run, to shake the feeling from my skin. But the forest had already claimed the rhythm of my steps. It moved with me, always just beyond, following, waiting. Shadows leaned longer, stretching across the leaves. Light fractured through the canopy, pale and trembling. I could feel something shift in the corner of my vision, watching, patient, silent. The hum softened. Or perhaps I simply listened more closely. The rustling behind me slowed, then stopped. For a moment, only the echo of my own boots remained. And then I realized The forest was never empty. It had been following me all along. Quietly, always, the road stretched endlessly. Night pressed down from above, pale and still. The tires whispered over dry asphalt. I saw her first in the dim curve ahead, a figure standing by the roadside, motionless, alone. I slowed. She raised no hand, spoke no word. Only her eyes met mine, reflecting pale moonlight. Cold, still, endless. The door clicked softly as she slid inside. The air shifted. Her presence filled the car, subtle and heavy, like damp fog rolling over the seats. The first mile stretched, then the next, each one longer than the last, though the odometer barely moved. She never spoke. I tried to glance at her in the rearview mirror. Her eyes followed, unblinking, reflective. Not human, not entirely, yet impossibly patient. Soft, eerie breathing rose from the back seat. Not mine, not hers, not quite. A vibration in the air, deep and persistent, curling around my chest and throat. The road twisted unnaturally. Curves appeared where none should be. Shadows of trees bent inward, leaning as if to close the space around me. The asphalt shimmered faintly, wet or alive. I couldn't tell. My hands gripped the wheel. The leather felt cold beneath my fingers, clammy with tension. Her eyes never left mine. Or perhaps I could not leave hers. The hum of the tires and the soft breathing became one, a rhythm I could feel beneath my skin. Every blink of my eyes made the world shift. The road stretched further. The shadows pressed closer. I dared to speak. No sound came from my lips. Only her presence answered. A weight of silence, heavy, patient, unyielding. The curve ahead seemed endless. A faint fog rose along the roadside. It curled around the tires, around my ankles, clinging to the seats. The smell of cold earth, damp pine, and something metallic, like iron, filled the cabin. I stole a glance back. The seat was empty. No figure, no breath, no eyes. A chill lingered where she had been. I could feel it brush my skin, settle into the leather, curl around my ribs. The soft hum of the tires continued, alone now, hollow, echoing through the silence. I pressed onward, alone again, though the memory of her lingered. The road seemed to twist still, folding upon itself. The shadows of the trees leaned in, patient, watching. The night held me, cold, still, unbroken. Her eyes, pale and reflective, were gone, but the quiet weight of her presence remained. The car moved forward. The tires whispered against the asphalt. I breathed slowly, carefully, feeling the chill that had settled in the back seat, knowing it would follow me, quiet, patient, never leaving. The clearing opened before me. Moonlight spilled across the ground, pale and soft. At first it felt calm, almost welcoming. The air smelled of cold grass and damp earth. I breathed slowly, letting the night settle over my shoulders. But something shifted in the edges of vision. Shadows danced with the breeze, did not reach. They moved against the wind, deliberate, twisting in shapes my mind could not name. Each step I took made the soft earth shiver beneath my boots. Above me, the trees swayed, not in the rhythm of wind, but with an unnatural motion, like they were breathing, stretching, alive. The hum of the night pressed against my ears. A subtle vibration beneath my feet, almost like a heartbeat. A figure appeared, tall, frozen mid-step. It blended with darkness, a shadow given shape. I blinked, and it vanished. The moonlight remained pale and steady, but the clearing felt heavier. The silence was thick, almost tactile, pressing against my skin and lungs. A soft rustle came from the perimeter. Leaves whispered without wind. Branches cracked faintly, echoing through the stillness. I stepped forward. The earth was cool beneath my shoes, damp, soft. Every movement seemed amplified, sharper, as if the clearing itself remembered each footfall. The shadow of the figure lingered in memory, stretching the edges of clearing. It was not just the trees, not just the darkness. It was something in between. The space around me felt alive, aware, patient. The moonlight fractured through high branches. Pale beams trembled over moss and fallen leaves. The clearing's calm was false, fragile, waiting to be broken. A chill brushed my neck. I spun, expecting motion, but nothing moved. Only the hum remained, soft, constant, vibrating through the air, the ground, my bones. I felt the rhythm of the forest sync with my own pulse. Soft, deliberate, careful. I could taste the cold night, earthy and metallic. Every breath stretched, each inhale filled with shadow. The figure did not return, yet the memory of it lingered, shaping the space around me. The shadows shifted, counter to the breeze, curling and straightening in silent arcs. I knelt briefly to touch the grass. It bent, then straightened as if acknowledging me or warning me. The soil beneath was cool, soft, familiar, and yet impossibly alien. I rose. The clearing seemed wider now, stretching beyond the limits of my vision. The trees leaned, not threatening, but observing, patient, deliberate. I paused. The moonlight reflected in pale streams over ground. A soft rustle, faint and careful, echoed from the edges. Then nothing. Silence returned, heavier than before. I could feel the clearing holding its breath. The figure, the shadows, the swaying trees, all vanished into memory. And yet I knew the night had changed. The air tasted colder. The clearing waited, patient, aware. And I stepped slowly, cautiously, carrying the quiet weight of what had moved unseen. The road stretched in beneath my feet. Night pressed in from every side. The trees disappeared into a low, creeping fog. It thickened as I walked, swallowed the fields, the fences, the distant lights. Everything familiar vanished beneath a gray, breathing veil. Each step I took was mirrored, soft, deliberate. I could feel behind me, close, patient, impossible to ignore. Shapes emerged in the haze. They bent, stretched, dissolved. One moment a tree, the next something else entirely. I blinked. It vanished. The air smelled damp, earth wet and cold, and something sharper beneath it, metallic like rusted iron. It pressed into my lungs, thick and heavy. I quickened my pace. The fog leaned with me, folding over the road, around my boots, brushing my ankles. Every step echoed softly, unnaturally long. The mirrored steps kept pace. A shadow flickered ahead, tall, unmoving, then gone. Another flicker beside me, always at the edge of sight, teasing, patient. I shivered. Cold fingers brushed my neck. Or maybe it was just a fog. The air tasted faintly of wet soil, of steel, of something I couldn't name. The hum of the world seemed distant now, swallowed by silence. I glanced back. The fog had no depth. Shapes pressed close, folded, vanished, reformed. I could feel them there, surrounding, watching, moving with me. The road stretched endlessly. Every mile felt heavier than the last. My boots pressed into the damp asphalt, soft and yielding beneath my weight. I tried to call out. No sound left my lips, only the soft echo of mirrored steps behind me. Patient, deliberate, waiting. The fog swirled higher. It curled around trees, along fences, across the ground like smoke with memory. I breathed slowly, trying to anchor myself. Each inhale tasted damp, metallic, alive. A figure appeared briefly, tall, faceless, frozen mid-step, then vanished as if it had never existed. I walked faster. The mirrored steps quickened in response, soft and careful. The road had no end. The fog had no edge. I stopped. The mirrored steps paused. The silence thickened, pressing into my ears, my chest, my skin. Shapes moved at the corners of vision. Nothing solid, yet impossibly present. The road, the fog, the night, they were no longer separate. All of it alive, aware, following. I stepped again. The fog leaned closer. The mirrored steps matched me, and I realized I had never been walking alone. The hollow yawned before me. Cold air pooled along the ground. Leaves crunched underfoot, brittle and dry. Soft footsteps followed. Not mine. They matched my pace exactly, echoing my every movement. Sometimes they sped ahead, then fell back again, patient, deliberate. I could feel them in the soles of my shoes, in the vibration of the earth beneath. The forest hummed. Low, constant, indecipherable. Not wind, not water, not life I recognized. Just a rhythm, vibrating through the trees, the ground, my chest. I stopped. The footsteps paused just behind me. A weight settled on the back of my neck. A gaze I could not meet. Cold, observing, waiting. Shadows stretched unnaturally, branches bent at impossible angles. Every tree seemed to lean closer, as if peering into the hollow. I moved forward again. Leaves whispered beneath my boots. The footsteps followed, soft, exact, patient. They pressed against the air, a reminder I was never truly alone. The hum shifted. A vibration that tickled my ears brushed against my spine, curling inside my chest. I tried to breathe quietly, carefully, but each inhale tasted damp, earthy, metallic. Another shadow flickered, tall, impossible, folding into the darkness. It did not move toward me, yet it moved with me, stretching across the hollow in rhythm with my steps. I glanced behind. Nothing visible, yet the hollow itself seemed to pulse with presence. The footsteps persisted, patient, deliberate, unseen. A leaf fell. It landed with a soft crack. I could feel the vibration of the earth beneath it. The hollow held its breath. The footsteps quickened slightly. I quickened mine instinctively. The forest bent around me, trees leaning, roots twisting across the path. The air smelled faintly metallic, damp, alive. I paused once more. The footsteps paused. The hum settled into a low, vibrating murmur. The shadows hung still. The gaze lingered. I stepped again. The hollow moved with me, silent, patient, infinite. The footsteps fell into rhythm behind me, soft and careful. The forest hummed, the shadows stretched, and I walked alone, though never truly alone, through the endless hollow. Dusk settled over the road. The sky bled gray and pale orange, fading into shadow. The tires whispered over worn asphalt. Then I saw them, eyes, glowing, fixed in the rear-view mirror. They followed me immediately, blinking only when I turned my head. Otherwise, patient, unyielding, observing. The forest pressed close on either side. Its hum rose through the air, vibrating in my chest. A faint metallic tang clung to the wind. I glanced down at the odometer. The numbers barely moved. Each mile stretched long, unnatural, as if the road itself had slowed. Signs appeared distant, unreadable. Their letters blurred and twisted. Everything familiar seemed distorted. The eyes shifted with me. Closer, inch by inch, mile by mile. I could feel their gaze crawling over my shoulders, brushing my skin. The tires hummed against asphalt. I could feel it through the soles of my shoes, the wheel beneath my fingers. The forest leaned inward, shadows curling along the edges of the road. I blinked. The eyes blinked with me. A faint reflection in the glass, bright, deliberate, almost human, but not. The road twisted again. Curves I did not remember appeared. The horizon stretched, pale and impossible. The sky smelled faintly of rain, damp leaves, and something metallic. I swallowed. The rear-view eyes held me, patient, relentless, unblinking. Every mile thickened the air, dense, alive. I tried to focus on the road ahead. The headlights carved faint paths through shadow. The forest hummed beneath the tires. The eyes shifted closer. Each blink stretched longer. The mirror reflected only the pale light, the road behind, the gaze that followed. Soft footsteps, maybe my own heartbeat, echoed in rhythm with the hum. I felt the eyes shift again. Closer now, not moving, but present, a weight in the air behind me. The road curved sharply. The forest seemed to twist, branches reaching toward the asphalt. I could feel the shadows curling, brushing my arms, my face, my hair. The eyes lingered, blinked once more with me, and then I felt them closer than ever. Silent, patient, unyielding. I exhaled slowly. The night pressed down, thick and unmoving. The road stretched ahead, empty yet impossible. The eyes in the rear view remained, waiting. The forest was quiet. Shadows stretched long across the damp earth. A faint light hummed between the trunks, swinging gently, though no wind moved. It drew me in, slow, irresistible, like a moth to a flame. The air smelled of wet moss, cold wood, and something faintly metallic, almost electric. A low hum filled the space, static, soft, vibrating through my chest and beneath my feet. It wrapped around the trees, around me, pulling me forward with careful insistence. Shadows flickered across the mist. Shapes twisted and dissolved, unrecognizable, impossible to define. Each step I took pressed into damp leaves, earth soft beneath my boots. The light moved slightly, swinging again, pale and deliberate. I thought I saw a figure shift among the trees, but when I blinked, only mist remained. I reached the spot. The lantern was gone. The pale glow vanished, leaving only fog curling around the trunks. And then I saw it, a figure, still watching. It did not move toward me, did not step back. It was patient, deliberate, part of the shadow and mist. The hum softened, settling into the silence. The forest felt alive, breathing around me, holding its own presence. I could feel the weight of the figure without touching it, its gaze resting behind my eyes, in my chest, beneath my skin. I stepped closer. The mist swirled around my ankles, cold, wet. The figure did not flinch. Shadows folded around it, forming impossible angles, dissolving in the same breath. I tried to reach for the lantern or for the figure itself. Nothing solid remained. The air tasted faintly of iron and rain, thick and cold. I moved back slowly. The figure stayed. Its presence lingered in the pale emptiness where the lantern had hung, a weight pressing softly against the forest, against the night, against me. The fog shifted. A branch creaked, bending unnaturally, and the forest exhaled around me. The lantern was gone. The figure remained. I walked away, soft footsteps pressing into wet leaves, the static hum fading, but the weight of the watching lingered, patient, silent, waiting. The trail wound before me, curved, twisted like it was breathing. Familiar landmarks shifted slightly, just enough to unsettle. The air smelled of damp leaves and cold earth. Each step pressed softly into the soft soil, echoing faintly in the stillness. A breeze, or perhaps no breeze, stirred the trees, moving leaves in deliberate patterns. Rustling came from all around. Leaves bent and curled, forming shapes I couldn't name. Something purposeful, watching, waiting. I blinked. A creature crouched between two trees. Tall, thin, impossible to find. Then, in the same breath, it was gone. Fog curled into its place, pale and thick, swallowing the trail behind it. I moved forward. The path twisted again, bending in ways I hadn't noticed before. Roots and rocks rearranged themselves subtly, soft underfoot, making the forest feel alive, aware, patient. Shadows lengthened, folding over the trail. They crept along the edges of vision, shifting faster than my eyes could track. The hum of the forest was faint now, vibrating just beneath my feet, brushing my skin. I glanced back. Nothing, only fog, curling between trunks, pressing at the ground, folding shapes that almost resembled what I'd seen. Each step carried weight. The air tasted damp, earthy, metallic. Cold pressed against my neck, my shoulders settling in the small of my back. Leaves rustled again. Patterns formed for a heartbeat. A circle, a line, a shape that seemed intentional. Then they scattered into nothing, carried by wind or by some unseen hand. I blinked again, and the creature reappeared. Different now, taller, darker, crouched in the fog, watching, patient, impossible to reach. I stopped. The path pulsed beneath my boots. Alive, waiting. The shadows curled closer, bending in ways trees should not. I felt their presence, heavy and deliberate, pressing at the edges of the trail. I moved slowly. Every footfall echoed softly, long after it landed. The fog whispered around my ankles, brushing cold and damp. The creature remained just out of focus, patient, always patient. The trail curved again. I followed, heart slow, careful. Branches overhead formed impossible angles, shadows folding and stretching, shaping themselves around my path. The forest exhaled. Leaves stilled. The creature vanished. Only fog remained, curling into the shape of absence, as if waiting for the next blink, the next step, the next breath. I walked on, alone, though never quite alone. The twisted trail wound beneath the fog, shadows following, breathing, waiting. The farmhouse sat alone. Faint pale light spilled from the windows, soft and hesitant, like it didn't fully belong. The air smelled of dry wood and cold stone. Leaves rustled gently outside, though no wind stirred. The world felt hollow, waiting. Shadows moved against the walls inside. Fleeting shapes impossible to hold. A chair shifted slightly. A curtain swayed, though still. I approached slowly. The faint hum of something, soft, constant, filled the space. A low knocking tapped intermittently, almost deliberate. The door opened silently. No hinges creaked. No handle resisted. Inside, the air was cold, heavy, and still. Empty chairs sat in quiet arrangement. They faced nothing, as if waiting. The hum continued, vibrating faintly through the floorboards beneath my feet. Shadows curled and twisted along the walls. Shapes appeared and vanished with each blink. The light flickered, pale, uncertain, bathing the room in uneasy calm. I stepped further inside. The air pressed against my skin, damp, thin, metallic. The floorboards creaked faintly beneath weight I could not hear. The knocking echoed again, soft, patient. I turned, expecting something, but the room remained empty. A cold draft brushed my neck. The hum pulsed in silence. I could feel it in my chest, beneath my ribs, settling into my bones. The light shifted subtly. Shadows formed shapes that hinted at presence, then dissolved into pale emptiness. The chairs remained patient and waiting. I reached the center of the room. The air smelled faintly of damp earth and old wood. The humming softened, then stretched into silence. I breathed slowly. Every sound echoed unnaturally. The farmhouse felt alive, watching, its gaze heavy, deliberate, unyielding. I stepped back toward the door. The hum lingered faintly. The shadows folded into the corners, and the pale light remained hesitant, touching the empty chairs and still air. I left. The farmhouse waited. The pale light continued to glow, soft, patient, unblinking, as though the room itself remembered every step I had taken. The forest was quiet, except for the hum. Low, steady, vibrating through the soil beneath my boots. The trees swayed in rhythm. Leaves whispered together, brushing one another in soft patterns. The air smelled of damp earth and pine resin, thick and heavy. Shadows twisted around me, long, impossible angles folding in on themselves. They moved as if aware of my presence, beckoning, patient. I stepped forward. The hum pressed against my chest, vibrating in my ribs, curling along my spine. Every footfall seemed mirrored by another, unseen, beneath the misty canopy. Branches arched overhead, bending subtly. The light was dim, pale, falling through gaps in the swaying leaves. Shadows stretched, twisted, and then almost dissolved. I blinked. A figure, or maybe a shadow, passed between two trees. I could not tell if it was separate from the darkness, or part of it. The hum rose, soft but insistent, weaving through the air in my lungs. I breathed slowly. The forest pulsed in rhythm with me, or perhaps I with it. Leaves brushed my arms as I moved, cool and damp, clinging. The scent of moss and soil grew stronger, richer, almost metallic. I sensed it. I was not alone. Something moved parallel to my steps. Patient, deliberate, unseen yet close. The shadows curled again. They formed shapes that almost looked human, then stretched into impossible angles, dissolving into mist. I stopped. The hum persisted, low and steady. I could feel the vibration beneath my feet, through the soles of my boots, into my chest. The forest seemed to breathe around me, alive, aware, waiting. I stepped again. Shadows shifted in reply. Leaves rustled, brushing my legs. The unseen presence walked with me, patient, following, unseen. The hum softened. The air pressed against my skin, cold, damp, heavy. I could feel eyes, or maybe awareness, on my back, on the sides, all around. I moved slowly. The forest bent with me, shadows curling, folding, beckoning. The hum wound around the trunks, around my ankles, pressing into the night. I exhaled quietly. The vibration lingered. The forest whispered in rhythm with the hum. I was walking among it, alone, though never quite alone, through shadows, mist, and the soft, insistent hum. The bridge rose before me, old with creaking faintly under its own weight. Fog curled from beneath, thick and suffocating, spilling over the edges. The air smelled of wet timber and cold water, heavy and metallic. I stepped forward. My boots pressed into the planks, damp and slippery. Soft footsteps followed, matching mine, echoing gently, though the bridge was empty. The fog swirled around the railings. Shapes twisted in the mist, impossible to define. I could see movement at the edge of vision, vanishing when I blinked. I reached for the railing. Something brushed it lightly. Barely there. Cold lingered on my fingers, a weight pressing into my skin. The water below whispered in fog-laden currents. Each breath felt thick, heavy, almost solid. I could taste the dampness, earthy and sharp, lingering in my throat. Footsteps pressed closer, though no one appeared. The fog wrapped around my ankles, curling upward, soft but insistent. Shadows flickered along the bridge, stretching and bending, folding into themselves. I blinked. The shapes shifted. A figure crouched at the edge, or perhaps just a shadow, mimicking movement, patient and deliberate. The railing was colder now, icy beneath my touch. A hum, low and steady, vibrated to the planks and into my boots. The fog pressed against my face, my chest, my shoulders. I moved slowly. Each step echoed softly, carried into mist, swallowed immediately. The unseen presence shifted with me, patient, silent, always there. A branch from the trees overhead scratched lightly against the rail. Leaves whispered along the planks. The fog thickened, curling higher, swirling in impossible patterns. I exhaled slowly. The footsteps behind me continued, soft, patient. The shapes in the mist danced, forming fleeting angles, impossible and alive. I stepped off the bridge. The cold lingered on my hands. The fog swallowed the structure behind me, leaving only silence, thick and waiting, as if the bridge had never existed. The road stretched endlessly. Fog curled along the asphalt, thick and swallowing. The air smelled of damp earth and tar, heavy and still. Trees bent over the road, forming unnatural arches. Their branches touched, whispered against each other. Leaves rustled softly, brushing the fog in patterns I couldn't follow. Shadows slithered along the pavement. They moved slower than I did, stretching, curling, sometimes just at the edge of my vision, gone when I looked directly. I walked forward, step by step. The road seemed to stretch further. Each bend repeated itself, familiar and wrong, and I realized I had walked in circles. The fog thickened. It pressed at my chest, my neck, my shoulders. The air tasted damp, metallic, sharp against my tongue. The trees shifted subtly. Their shadows merged with the mist, folding and twisting. Every landmark was almost the same, but different. A broken sign, a bend, a patch of leaves. Nothing remained consistent. I paused. Soft footsteps echoed behind me, mirroring mine, though no one appeared. The asphalt pressed cold against my boots, wet and slick. The fog moved around my ankles. I could feel it brush against my skin, damp and alive. Shadows curled in response, forming shapes that almost seemed aware. I moved again. The road twisted subtly beneath my gaze, bending as if alive. Each step pressed into the mist, leaving no trace, yet the path repeated itself endlessly. A hum rose faintly from the asphalt, low, constant, vibrating beneath my soles, up into my legs. I felt eyes, impossible, unseen, watching from the fog. I blinked. Shapes shifted. The same bend, the same tree, the same shadow. I was walking in circles, though the road seemed to stretch forever. The fog curled higher. Branches scraped lightly above me, wet and cold. The shadows danced with it, folding into themselves, stretching impossibly long. I exhaled slowly. The road remained endless, repeating, alive. The fog pressed in and the shadows waited, patient, as I walked again, alone, disoriented, on the vanishing road. The branches pressed close, dense, tangled, brushing against my arms as I moved. The night smelled of wet wood and moss, heavy and still. I peered through the shadows. Tiny figures stood among the trees, impossible shapes, frozen, almost unreal. Their eyes caught the faint moonlight, small, bright, unblinking, watching, waiting. The branches swayed overhead. They moved with a life of their own. Leaves brushed my skin, damp, soft, almost breath-like. I blinked. The figures vanished. Darkness filled the spaces between the trunks. A hum rose faintly from somewhere deep in the forest. Low, steady, vibrating through the soil beneath my boots. I felt it press against my chest, against my ears. The shadows shifted subtly. Shapes stretched along the ground and up the trees, curving unnaturally, moving just at the edge of my vision. I breathed slowly. The air pressed damp and heavy against my face. Branches scraped softly above me, like fingertips against wood. The figures returned. For a heartbeat, frozen and watching. Then they dissolved into the shadows again, leaving only stillness. I stepped forward. Twigs snapped lightly beneath my boots. Sound swallowed immediately by the dense night. The hum persisted. I could feel it in my feet, in my chest, like the forest itself was breathing with me. I paused. The shadows curled around me. The branches swayed, almost alive, brushing my arms and face. The tiny eyes glimmered once more. Then gone. Nothing remained but darkness and the soft, insistent hum of the woods. I exhaled quietly. The forest pressing on all sides. The night waited, patient, watching. The hill rose before me, barren and steep. Fog clung to its slopes, curling around the grass like smoke. The air smelled of damp earth and cold stone, heavy and still. A crackle filled the space. Static vibrated the air, low and insistent, pressing against my chest. Each step I took seemed to hum beneath my boots. Shadows twisted at the edges of my vision, long, impossible angles folding into the fog. I blinked, and they shifted, always just beyond clarity. I sensed something waiting, a presence just beyond the mist, patient, silent. It pressed into the back of my mind, a weight without shape. I called out softly. My voice disappeared into the fog. No echo returned. The static hummed louder, vibrating through the soles of my boots. I could feel it in my legs, in my chest, low and insistent. Shadows stretched closer. They curled along the hilltop, folding into themselves, touching the mist but never forming. I stepped forward, careful. The grass was wet, pressing cold against my palms when I brushed against it. The fog wrapped my ankles, curling upward, alive. I exhaled slowly. The presence shifted. It was there, patient, silent, unblinking, just beyond the fog, watching, waiting. The static pressed to my ears, low and endless. Branches or shapes swayed in rhythm with it, casting fleeting shadows that dissolved immediately. I paused, listening. Every sound echoed softly in the fog. Every shadow stretched impossibly long. The hilltop waited. The mist curled. The static vibrated. The presence lingered. And I was alone, alone and aware, walking among shadows that might not be there. The bridge loomed above the riverbed, with age and rotting, metal rails cold beneath my fingers. Fog curled upward, thick and silent, carrying the smell of damp earth and rust. A whisper drifted from below, soft, indistinct, intimate, like it knew my name. I froze, heart tightening, listening. Shadows stretched along the supports. They moved with the fog, twisting and folding, shaping and reshaping, never quite solid. I leaned over the edge. The wind was absent, the riverbed empty. The whisper rose, faint but present. It hummed along the fog, brushing against my ears, pressing close, familiar and alien at once. I could feel the damp mist curling around my ankles. Cold pressed against my skin, rising, almost breathing with me. Branches scraped lightly overhead, wet and soft. Silence fell between whispers. The fog thickened, swallowing the shadows. Shapes hinted beneath, moving just beyond comprehension. I exhaled slowly. The voice returned, closer now, soft as breath against my neck, though nothing was there. The bridge groaned under its own weight. The smell of wet wood and iron filled my senses. My hands pressed against the railing, slick and cold. I peered down again. Nothing, only fog, curling, alive, obscuring the hollow beneath. The whisper lingered. No words, no language, just intention. It moved with the mist, intimate, patient. I stepped back. Shadows folded into themselves. The fog clung to the rails, to my boots, to every inch of the cold air. The voice faded, leaving only silence. Heavy, waiting. And I stood alone beneath the bridge, listening to nothing, feeling everything. The forest thinned into a pale clearing. Moonlight brushed the trunks, silver and cold. The ground smelled damp, earthy and faintly metallic. Leaning against a tree was a mirror. Its frame was rough, bark entwined with strange twists. It reflected the moon, the fog, the forest, and me. I stepped closer. My reflection blinked differently, paused slightly after I did. A shadow lingered behind my eyes, smiling when I was not. The air hummed. Not wind, not static. Something in tune with the mirror itself. The vibrations pressed lightly against my chest, my ears, my skin. I reached out. Fingers brushed the glass. The surface was cold, slick, alive, almost breathing. The forest shifted. Shadows twisted around the mirror, elongating, folding into shapes I could not name. A soft rustling in the leaves answered every tremor of my reflection. I stepped back. The smile remained, slow, deliberate. It did not mimic me. It watched. It waited. It knew. The hum deepened. It vibrated through my boots, up my legs, into my chest. Every inhale carried the scent of wet moss, of fog, of something unseen. I moved again, careful. The reflection lagged behind, sometimes ahead. Sometimes it whispered, though no sound reached my ears. The mirror seemed to breathe. Shadows pulled at its base, moving against the moonlight. Shapes rose and vanished, folding back into the mist. I leaned closer once more. The reflection tilted its head, smiling just a fraction. The forest hummed with it, alive, patient, surreal. I stepped away. The clearing remained still, pale and quiet. The mirror waited, silent but present, its smile lingering even as I walked back into the trees. Fog curling at my ankles, shadows stretching, and the hum of the forest following me. The road was empty. Fog rolled low, curling around the tires, thick and soft. The air tasted cold, sharp against my tongue. Every breath hung in the space between me and the mist. It lingered, heavy, almost tactile, as if the fog itself could hold it. My lungs burned lightly, the rhythm slow, deliberate. Shapes moved just beyond comprehension. Twisting forms, barely there, folding in the fog. Sometimes they seemed solid. Sometimes they vanished, leaving only the cold and the silence. I felt it then. A gaze. Constant. Unblinking. It didn't move, yet it followed. Across the road, in the shadows, in the folds of fog curling around my boots. I could feel it in the hairs on my arms, in the prickling at my neck. The fog shifted. Soft currents brushed my cheeks and lips. I thought I saw a figure, crouched low, then gone when I blinked. The air smelled damp, earth-heavy, with a trace of something metallic. It clung to my clothes, my hair, my skin. I shivered despite layers, the chill deeper than the night. I stepped forward. Footfalls muffled, swallowed by the fog. Each inhale rasped in my chest. Each exhale stretched long and cold. The shapes returned, fleeting. Some mirrored the movement of my arms. Some darted sideways, moving counter to the wind. They were patient, observing, alive in some subtle way I couldn't name. I tried to listen. Silence pressed in, thicker than the fog itself. Only the soft of my own heartbeat, slowed by the cold, matched the rhythm of the mist. I stopped. The gaze intensified. I imagined it could see through the fog, see me entirely. Every nerve felt exposed. The fog swirled around my legs. It rose, curling higher with each breath, tasting damp and strange. A coldness brushed my fingers as I reached out. Nothing, only air. I moved again. Slow, careful, measured. The fog bent with me, shifting with every step. Shapes appeared and disappeared, always just beyond the corner of my vision. I paused at a bend. The world narrowed to gray and white, shadows melting into fog. The gaze never left. I never saw eyes, never saw a face, only felt the weight of its attention, pressing, unyielding. I breathed slow, exhale heavy, curling into mist, lingering. Inhale sharp, tasting the cold and the damp. The fog swallowed it all, leaving silence behind. I stepped forward once more. The fog parted slightly, as if allowing me passage, and I realized the gaze was not following anymore. It was waiting. Only the fog remained, shifting, alive, breathing with me, watching me. The night was still. Mist hovered low over the water. The air smelled damp, earthy, carrying the faint chill of early fall. A single lantern glowed in the distance. Its light trembled, never steady, reflected in the lake. It danced across ripples that shouldn't have moved. I walked closer, soft steps pressed into wet grass, cold dew soaking my shoes. The hum of the night wrapped around me, thick and quiet. The reflection stretched, warped, as if the lake itself was watching. Shadows flickered across the water. Every ripple seemed alive, folding and folding again, breaking reality's rhythm. I stopped at the shore. The lantern's glow hovered, unmoving yet restless. A faint breeze stirred, but the surface barely shifted. It felt intentional, deliberate. I leaned forward. The scent of mud and something metallic drifted upward. The ripples pulsed again, forming shapes I almost recognized. Then they disappeared. A soft whisper grazed the edge of my hearing. Or maybe it was the water. Or maybe it was the air, bending just to watch me. I stepped into the shallow edge. The cool water wrapped my ankles, still reflective. The lantern seemed closer now, though I hadn't moved far. The light wavered, not with the wind, not with my heartbeat. It moved independently, as though it were breathing, alive. I could feel in the marrow of my bones a calm yet unsettling presence. Shadows gathered at the periphery of my vision. They were not solid, not fully there. They moved in rhythm with the lantern's pulse, echoing the lake's soft, impossible motion. I breathed slowly, exhale hanging long over the water, inhale tasting the cold, wet air, metallic hints mingling with moss and fog. I stepped closer. The ripples grew sharper, concentric, spreading outward. The lantern reflected not only light, but something else, something watching from beneath, just beyond reach. I paused. The lake was quiet, yet it hummed subtly as if breathing. Every small wave whispered against the shore, brushing my skin with unseen fingers. I crouched. Water lapped gently at my hands. The lantern's reflection fractured again, forming angles that didn't exist, shapes that seemed intentional. I shivered. It wasn't threatening, not in the way I expected, but it felt alive, aware, patient, waiting for something I couldn't name. The fog rolled closer, soft and thick. The lantern became a pale glow within the white haze. The lake's surface folded into itself, swallowing shapes, reflections, even time. I stood again. The hum persisted. The water still rippled. And the lantern remained, drifting silently on the lake, watching, breathing, waiting. I stepped back. The cool grass soaked through my shoes again. The mist wrapped around me like a thin cloak. The lantern's glow lingered far off, its pulse slow and steady, haunting, calm. I didn't look back. The fog, the lake, the light, they would remain, patient, unchanging. The road was quiet. Fog clung to the edges, curling around the tires of distant, unseen cars. The night smelled of wet earth and pine, heavy, close. I noticed footprints, large, irregular, pressed into the damp soil. Too big, too uneven to be human. I followed them. Each step echoed softly against the hollow hush of the forest. Leaves rustled somewhere far off, yet no wind stirred. The trees seemed different, subtly aware. Their branches leaned inward, glancing, shifting, as if watching me move. I crouched near one print. The soil was cool, pressed against my palm. Indentations deep, wide, impossibly deliberate. A distant hum rose from the woods, low, vibrating in my chest. I could feel it in my breath, in the soles of my shoes, in the back of my neck. I walked slowly, eyes scanning. Shapes flitted in the corner of vision. Not quite shadow, not quite solid. The forest itself seemed alive. Trees bent slightly as I passed. Branches swayed, tracing me. Even the fog shifted, curling and twisting around my legs, teasing the path ahead. Another footprint appeared, closer, heavier. I felt a presence nearby, silent, patient. The leaves crunched underfoot, soft and wet, yet echoing, as though the earth itself was amplifying my steps. Somewhere behind, a faint rustle mimicked my own. I stopped. The prints ended suddenly, swallowed by moss and shadow. The air thickened, humid and metallic. I swallowed hard. Every tree around me felt intent, their trunks like dark sentinels, branches reaching toward me in slow, deliberate arcs. I breathed slowly. Fog brushed my face, wet and cold. I thought I saw movement, tiny flickers, like eyes glinting from within the bark. But when I blinked, nothing remained. I moved again, guided by the prints that seemed to pulse with unseen energy. The path curved unnaturally. Each step brought a new rustle, a subtle shift in shadow. I realized the forest had been leading me, or maybe following me. I couldn't tell which. The ground hummed faintly, a vibration beneath my feet, soft and insistent. Every step aligned with it, in rhythm, in silence. I stopped, sensing a gaze resting on the back of my neck. Nothing visible, just the awareness, steady and unblinking. The footprints disappeared entirely, yet the path felt alive, waiting. The forest held its breath. I stood alone, cold fog curling around my ankles, branches swaying gently, almost in anticipation. I took a slow step back. The hum receded. The forest returned to stillness, but the feeling lingered, watchful, patient, unnervingly calm. The road stretched onward, empty, endless, twisting beneath the pale light of the moon. And somewhere, just beyond sight, the path remained, waiting for me to return. The road stretched ahead, pale under the muted moonlight. Fog curled along the edges, soft and heavy, smelling of wet asphalt and moss. Every step pressed into silence, yet the air seemed alive. A hum rose beneath my feet, soft, almost melodic, vibrating through the soles of my shoes. It blended with the rustle of distant leaves, low and insistent. I leaned closer, listening. Words seemed to form in the wind. Faint, broken, almost comprehensible. Shadows moved around me, slow, brushing past my arms, trailing along the asphalt. Cold and damp, they whispered against my skin. The road seemed to bend, subtly, unnaturally. Each turn brought a new phrase, a syllable caught in the fog. I could almost hear my name. The air grew thicker. I could taste damp earth, feel the moisture cling to my cheeks. The hum grew louder, pulsing softly with every heartbeat. I stopped. The wind wrapped around me, pressing close. Words teased at the edge of understanding, not threatening, but impossible to fully grasp. Shadows stretched longer. Branches arched over the road, dark fingers tracing the fog. A brush of coldness passed my neck, almost intimate. I walked again. Each step echoed in rhythm with the hum, and the road seemed to ripple beneath me. The whispers followed, shaping sentences that vanished as soon as I tried to understand them. A figure flickered in the corner of vision, not solid, not fully shadow, just a suggestion of shape, watching, waiting. The fog thickened. It rose from the cracks in the asphalt, curling around my ankles. It smelled of damp metal and wet stone. I leaned closer to the wind. The words almost made sense. A name, a memory, a warning maybe. The road stretched endlessly. Shadows brushed past, soft and deliberate. The hum settled into a quiet pulse. And I realized I was not alone. The whispers lingered as I moved forward. Cold air pressed my clothes to my skin, each word fading before it could become whole. I stopped once more. The fog clung to me, heavy, insistent. The shadows paused, brushing but not touching. The road waited, soft and patient, humming beneath my feet. I breathed slowly. The whispers receded slightly, leaving only the hum. And somewhere, just ahead, the road seemed to sigh. I took a single step forward. The hum followed. The shadows lengthened. The words remained just out of reach. Alone, moving slowly, I continued down the whispering road. And the fog, the hum, the cold, all of it followed. The cabin sat at the edge of the clearing. Moonlight touched the roof, pale and cold. Fog wrapped the trees like fingers, soft and damp. A flicker moved behind the window. Slow, breathing, like the cabin itself inhaled. I stepped closer. The air smelled of wet wood and smoke long gone. Each footfall pressed into silence, yet I felt the hush press back. A rustle of leaves whispered across my shoulders. The window flickered again. Shadows danced inside, forming shapes almost human, wrong in their motion, too stiff, too smooth. I could hear it before I saw it. A soft shifting, like something pacing for me. The floorboards hummed faintly, vibrating through the soles of my shoes. I leaned closer. Breath fogged the glass. Movement paused, and then resumed, slow, deliberate. The door was ajar. I hesitated. Though it smelled cold, damp, alive, one step forward. The air tightened around me. Static hummed faintly, like electricity through the fog. Inside, shapes flickered. A figure half formed, limbed strangely, turning just enough to catch the pale light. It watched, unblinking, patient. I swallowed. The door swung closed behind me. Silently, slowly, a sigh of wood and air that trapped me inside. The flicker continued. Shadows elongated along the walls, writhing in patterns I could not name. Each step I took pressed the floorboards into soft groans. I smelled damp plaster and something metallic, faint, almost like rust. The figure moved again. Not toward me, not away, just shifting, always watching. I pressed my hand to the wall. Cold, rough, solid, yet every breath felt thick, heavy, filled with the presence of the room itself. Time stretched. Each blink of the window held a pause too long. The flicker was alive, almost breathing with me. I wanted to turn, to run, but the door remained silent, unyielding. The shadows leaned closer, just a hint, brush in my peripheral vision. A whisper, or was it the wind? Indistinct, close enough to taste. A warning or a lament. I moved again, carefully. The floorboard groaned underfoot, echoing in the heavy, still air. Shapes shifted, following my motion, never touching, just observing. The flicker paused. The figure froze mid-step, almost human, but wrong. Eyes I could not see seemed to weigh upon me. The door sighed once more, unmoving. I stood in the center of the cabin. Alone, yet not alone. The hum of the room, the flicker of the window, the faint rustling of something unseen, all pressed close. I exhaled slowly. The room inhaled with me. The shadows did not move. The window did not flicker. For a moment, silence held me. Then the air shifted, and I knew, though nothing touched me, I would carry this cabin, this flicker, with me forever. The fog pressed in from all sides. Thick, damp, smelling of cold earth and wet leaves. I could barely see my own hands. Hours had passed, or minutes. Time slipped like water through my fingers. Every step sank softly into the mud, soft, wet squelches beneath my boots. The fog absorbed sound, leaving only my breath. I stopped. A faint hum lingered in the air, static and low. It vibrated through the soles of my feet. Shapes blinked at the edge of vision. Eyes, I thought, catching the faintest light. Then gone. Each blink a reminder I was not alone. The forest whispered around me. Branches swayed though there was no wind. A cold touch brushed my cheek. Or did I imagine it? The fog shifted. Mounds of mist became shadows. Shadows became figures. Figures became nothing. I walked slowly, deliberately. Every landmark I thought I recognized dissolved into gray. A tree, a rock, a path I remembered. All vanished, leaving only fog. The silence hummed louder, like something breathing with me, but slower, patient, watching. I leaned forward. The cold seeped through my jacket. The damp clung to my hair. Every footstep pressed deeper into the wet earth. I thought I heard footsteps behind me. Soft, hesitant, matching mine. I paused. The sound stopped. Eyes blinked at the edge of my vision again. Always there, just beyond comprehension. No face, no shape, just the feeling of being observed. I breathed in. Fog filled my lungs. The metallic taste of it lingered. My exhale drifted into the gray, dissolving. I turned slowly. Nothing moved, but the weight of being watched remained. The ground shifted underfoot. Roots tangled like fingers, slick with damp. The fog hugged each tree, twisting around the trunks. They leaned toward me, not in wind, but in purpose. A whisper followed me. Low, indistinct, almost part of the hum. I couldn't tell if it was real, or if the fog spoke in my mind. I stopped again. The mist pressed close, cold and still. Eyes blinked. always blinking, patient. I realized then I had walked for hours or days. The fog erased the path, leaving nothing to guide me. A figure flickered ahead. Or perhaps it was a fog taking shape. It didn't move. It didn't need to. The hum of the silence grew, layered now with breath I could not place. Every sound my own, yet not my own. I exhaled. The mist swallowed it. I swallowed it back in. Alone, not alone. The fog held both truths at once. I took another step. The wet mud clung to my boots. The forest leaned closer. The eyes followed. And I understood. I was a guest here, patiently observed. The fog would not let me leave. Not yet. I moved forward. Slowly, cautiously. Every step a whisper. Every breath a signal. The fog closed around me. And I walked into the gray, alone, yet not alone.